in any learning environment. My name is Jennifer Smith, and I am an academic coach in Study Lab. You'll hear a lot about what we do in Study Lab as the presentation goes on. If you have any questions about anything that any of our undergraduate academic coaches are saying, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. We will be answering them throughout, just chatting back and forth, any of us, and then we can also answer some questions at the end if there are a lot of questions that keep coming up. Study Lab is a place where we provide tools and resources for you to discover kind of the most efficient and effective ways for you to study. It's very personal to every single student. And so we are a resource where you can come, and we have a lot of different tools and resources and appointment types and services for you to take advantage of. So as we go through, our undergraduate academic coaches here are going to talk about their challenges that they had when they first started in college and how they overcame them, and then just some tips and tricks that we tell a lot of students that come through our office that we have found to be very helpful.
Luke, you're muted.
Sorry, guys. Hey, can you hear me? Okay. I am a undergraduate academic coach. Like Jen mentioned, my name is Luke. I will be a senior this upcoming semester. I am majoring in biology with a chem minor. And after graduation, I plan on attending medical school. I am hopefully going to be beginning the interview process soon. I just recently completed all of my secondary applications, so fingers crossed we get some invitations. Some of the subjects that I tutor Bio 1 and Bio 2, which correspond to 150 and 160 respectively, genetics, which is Bio 350, biochemistry, which is Bio 1000, human physiology, which is Bio 1250, and then intro to neuroscience, which is Neuro 1000. Now, before moving on to discuss one of the skills that is really important to being a successful student, I would just like to introduce and talk about some of my own personal academic challenges that I faced when I was doing the transition from high school to college. Now, the transition is very scary at first. It's overwhelming at times, and a lot of people don't do it right the first time, but that is okay, right? It's a new environment. It's a new setting. It's okay if you are unsure of what to do in the beginning, but that's why people like us are here to help you navigate college and also provide you with the resources that you need. So two of the biggest challenges that I faced when I was coming into college as a freshman was self-confidence and my time management or organization skills. Coming in to college, most people in high school at Pitt do relatively well in high school. So I always considered myself, academically elite, and I thought I was very, very smart coming into college, but I had a rude awakening whenever I failed my very first chemistry exam ever. I thought I studied well. I thought, I could just piggyback off what I was doing in high school, and all of those skills and all of those techniques that I used would work in college. But I found out after receiving that exam grade, I was wrong. And after reading that or receiving that grade, I felt really inferior to my peers. Some of my friends, they did really, really well on that exam, and I started to question, am I in the right field? Am I in the right major? Am I doing, the right thing? Am I smart enough, basically, to be a doctor or do the pre-med track? And it's very easy and very common that people fall into this trap, especially coming in as a freshman and you're not doing, as well as your peers. It's very easy to compare yourself, but I want to emphasize the point that, you got to be resilient and you have to have faith in yourself and know that you can do this. And it's all about asking for help. Initially, I lacked this self-confidence, but after, thinking things over and realizing that I should go out and, talk to some people and get some help, that really helped me get on the path to establishing some confidence. So what I did in that situation, I talked to some of my peers, what did they do to study for the test? I talked to my undergraduate teaching assistants, which have also taken the course prior, most likely with that same professor, and did relatively well, asked them for tips and ideas. And I also talked to the professor to see what I could do with that exam grade or how could I improve for the next or the following exams. And be honest with yourself. Definitely make sure that you are being as honest as you can with your preparation for the exams. Did you really put in, the time and energy to do everything? Now, my second academic challenge that I face, which I will be offering some skills and tips on in the following slide, is my time management and my organization skills. Coming into college, I never really had to appropriately allot time for all of my activities in high school. I kind of just did them. I didn't really use a planner. I didn't really effectively time manage in that sense. So coming into college, especially as a pre-med, I was very overwhelmed with all of the things that I had to do aside from just academics, but also research, volunteering, and the whole 9 yards. So at first, it was really hard for me to effectively manage my time and effectively study for exams. But that's okay. In the beginning, that happens. You've never really had to do this before, so it's okay. It's a learning process. We're still learning every day. Even me and the other academic coaches, is every semester is a new game, almost in a sense, or a new, map that we have to navigate. So what I did first to help myself manage that was buy a planner. And just as the semesters went on, I wasn't that great in the beginning, but as it goes on, you get a lot better at it once it becomes almost in a routine. So moving on to time management and going through these 4 bullet points, I will help offer some advice and tips on how you can be an effective time manager coming into freshman year. So talking about the first bullet, identifying and managing time wasters, I always like to emphasize the phrase that we also use at Study Lab is study smarter, not harder. Successful students are able to identify the important material, minimizing studying time, which allows for more time to say, exercise or self-care or do other activities that help to reduce stress. Also, I want to emphasize the point, how you study and the strategies you employ are critical to managing your time spent studying. I would definitely offer, which we'll talk about in the upcoming slides, use active learning strategies. Coming into college, I did not use active learning strategies. I relied on the passive learning strategies that I used during high school. So using the active learning strategies, that helps you to minimize the time spent studying because you're engaging with the material and you are most likely going to remember it for the long term, so you don't have to keep recovering the same material over and over and over again, or in a way that would allow you to study, for more, or study more things rather than focusing on the same principle over and over. So definitely emphasize active learning strategies and avoid your passive learning strategies. For the second bullet point here, determining your priorities. Before you can become an effective time manager, you have to determine what is important to you in your life and your daily routine. So for example, I prioritize class attendance, studying, eating, sleeping, socializing, and exercising during the school year. Knowing these, I could effectively then block time for each of them throughout the week. And it's also important to note that priorities will change from week to week, since some weeks are busier than others. So coming in, your first maybe 2-3 weeks may be relatively light in terms of projects and exams, things like that. But once you start to get into the meat of the semester, things will start to pick up. So sometimes, some weeks you're going to have to allot more time for studying than for, say, socializing, which is not ideal, but it's just important to note that you're here to learn, right? And you want to make sure that you're doing as best as you can, especially for how much money you're paying with everything. So you want to make sure that, you're using your time effectively. Also, I would like to add that, or just to give you an example of, like, if you would, or in determining your priorities for, say, you allotted, or say for a certain day, to give you an example of determining your priorities for, say, you had a really busy week, you could, for that week, you could determine that, okay, well, on Monday, I want to make sure that I could finish this assignment, so then I could take Tuesday and Wednesday to study for my exam on Thursday, right? If you help to identify these priorities of what you want to accomplish in your week and what you want to get done, that will allow for more time to be focused solely on one thing. So for example, an exam on Friday, you could study Wednesday or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you finish your assignment on Monday, you don't have to worry about that, and you could just, grind for that exam. Talking about the third bullet point, using planning tools, I highly suggest investing in a planner of some sort. There are a lot of apps, you could use if you like a virtual planner. You could use your Google Calendar, things like that. I like an actual physical calendar, or a planner just because I like to cross things out and write things in my planner, but everyone to each their own, whatever works best for you. Now, these are really, really important because college can get really hectic and it can be really easy to forget something. So if you have a planner or a calendar in place, you could make sure that you minimize that risk of forgetting something, because it's, whenever you are told that you have this exam or this project due on that date, you could enter it directly that day so you don't have to worry about forgetting it. I know some people that do really well with not using a planner, but personally, I would forget things left and right if I did not write them down. So I would definitely suggest using a planner or a calendar. That will definitely help. Now, having this too, you could also transcribe in important dates and deadlines. It could also give you perspective for your week or following weeks and allows for planning and even better proper time management. So to give an example, if you look at your planner and you see you have a busy week filled with an exam or 2 assignments, you could allot your time accordingly throughout the week to tackle everything successfully and efficiently. Now, just to mention one resource that we have on our website, the Study Lab website, it is the time management calculator. Now, this tool allows you to enter in how much time that you allot each week to a certain activity, such as socializing, studying, eating, sleeping, things like that. And it helps to give you perspective of what your week will look like and how much time you have remaining in your week to fill with something else, or how you could, switch your time around. So definitely check that out if you need some help to get some perspective on, how much time really will be dedicated in my week to studying or sleeping or things like that. And talking about the last bullet point briefly, setting and maintaining a routine. Basically a continuation of everything that I've just said. A routine is the ultimate product of a successful time management or of successful time management skills. By organizing and planning your time, a routine will undoubtedly develop. So even if you don't think that you could set this routine, if you manage your time effectively week to week, you will most likely indirectly be developing, or you won't even think that you're developing a routine in the process. It is hard to first develop a successful routine, but as you become more experienced from semester to semester, you will gain a better sense of where to spend most of your time. For example, I've learned over the years that my routine has shifted my focus, or the focus of my time, to the library studying, whereas my freshman year, I often found myself in my dorm in between classes, really not being productive or working on not what I should have been working on. But routines are effective in maximizing your time management and your accountability. And it's really, really important, especially being remote and studying remotely, that you have this routine established, because it will hold you accountable and it will allow for better time management if you have this routine to follow. So just to go through a tool that you could use for bettering your time management skills, especially coming in as a freshman, start off well. I use this all the time, this resource or this tool, the syllabus checklist. So basically what this is doing is this is allowing you to transcribe all of the important information from your syllabus into your planners or your calendars. Now, if some of you aren't aware, a syllabus is more so like an itinerary almost for the semester, kind of like a contract with you and your professor. Basically, it outlines the course, gives you important information about their email, contact information, grades breakdown, and normally week by week, I guess itineraries, right? Or it's going to tell you week to week what you're going to be doing in class on that day. So if you're in bio, Monday's class will be focused on protein structure, right? It just gives you a breakdown of the course. So going through each of these bullet points, I'll show you how you could utilize this tool or this resource for yourselves. So the first bullet point here, organizing your time, using a semester calendar to help you plan ahead for your assignments and exams. So basically, I kind of mentioned this, once you get your syllabus, it has all of the important exam dates and homework assignments and project deadlines and things like that. So when you do get all your syllabi, I emphasize or stress the point that you should sit down, spend 20 minutes updating your planner or your calendar with all the important deadlines and dates, just because once the semester does pick up, it can get very hectic and you could forget about these dates or small little homework assignments, things like that, relatively easy. But if you have them all transcribed at the beginning of the semester into your planner or your calendar, it will be really hard for you to miss that. It will also give you perspective from week to week. So if you see on the weekend, on a Sunday, you're like, okay, I have a really busy week upcoming, it can help you plan and allot your time accordingly, to help with your time management and make sure that you're really, studying and doing everything most efficiently. Moving on, utilizing a weekly schedule or to-do list to help you stay up to date on your work. I use this one every day. I do a daily objectives list that I write the night before. Some people do weekly objective lists. I like to do daily, but whatever works for you. But basically what you do, I write it on a Post-it note and put it into my planner, all the things that I want to accomplish that day. And I like to do this because it not only it's effective for your time management, but also it holds you accountable. It really keeps you up to speed on everything, so you really don't fall behind. And also the best part, at least for me, is I feel accomplished when I finish something and I could cross it out or, things like that. But I like to do that, but whatever works for you. If you use a virtual planner or a virtual calendar, you could probably add task lists or things like that just to really keep you on pace for the week and especially on the day, to make sure that you could finish all these things on time. Choose a place to write down class information such as class location, office hours, and grade breakdowns to always have on hand. This is almost in a sense a little cheat sheet of your class or of the syllabus. So this is nice to have if you're ever curious about a grade breakdown or if you need quick reference to find the professor or the TA's email or office location, things like that. It's really nice to have this on hand, just to even save on a little time. You don't have to go searching through a syllabus or downloading a syllabus and searching for it. It's nice to have this semester at a glance, right, or this little cheat sheet just to reference at times when you have quick questions about dates of, assignments or grade breakdowns or things like that. Moving on to the second bullet point, preparing for class. Make sure you have all your books and materials, decide how you're going to organize your notes and determine where you're going to study. This is really important, especially being a freshman coming into freshman year. Sometimes the class style is a little overwhelming when you first, when you take your first class. At least I was overwhelmed because it was a lot different than my high school classes. So just making sure that you're prepared in every way will help minimize anxiety and stress whenever you do get there for the first day, making sure you have all your books and your notes so you could focus on all of your time, paying attention, listening to the professor, maybe talking to your peers, getting to know, some here and there. So just making sure that you're prepared will definitely help alleviate the anxiety. And also it will minimize on time, or you won't waste time during class, scrambling for notes or finding something to write with, so you won't miss anything the professor is saying. Decide how you're going to organize your notes. This is important before going into class, just because if that lecture is based on a professor really just speaking and a professor that really tests you on his exams just mostly on what he says in class or she says in class, it's important to make sure that you have a good organization of your notes. This will help before class and also after class when you're reviewing your notes. If you have a solid organization, it'll help with the studying process. And determining where you're going to study. This is really important, especially for remote learning. Make sure you can find a space that is conducive, right, to a learning and studying environment. Make sure that you are, limiting yourself from distractions. You could put your phone in a box, right, or put it away or not have it near you. Make sure you have a desk if that works for you. You're sitting upright. You have light, things like that. Even little things like that, they can make all the difference in studying and staying focused because distractions, especially at our home, are very, very easy, or it's very easy to get very distracted at home. So any way that you can minimize those distractions or your likelihood to get distracted would be the best for you. And the last bullet point, connecting with your outside resources. You could meet with professor and UTAs, as I did in the beginning of my freshman year whenever I had that initial run-in with the failed chemistry test. I met with my professor and I talked to the undergraduate teaching assistants who, like I said, are students that have also taken the class prior to you and have done relatively well in it and have most likely taken it with that professor. So they definitely could have some insight and advice on how to succeed in that course. And then also meeting with the professor, even if you don't have a question about the material at hand or anything like that, just go to the professor, introduce yourself, get to know them. People think that these professors are scary people that are very authoritative, but I'd like to beg to differ on that. Most of them are very, very nice people, and they do care about student success. So if you go introduce yourself and just get to know them, they are more than happy to help you out academically, but also non-academically related as well. in this last identifying resources on campus. If you would click that link, the campus resources, that will direct you to all of the resources that are available to undergraduate students here on campus. They are not only just academic resources, you have mental resources, you have holistic resources, things like that, that will help you acclimate really well to the college lifestyle beyond the academics, because it's very important, right, to take care of your academic health, but also your actual physical and mental health as well. So if you ever are in need of assistance or help, click that link, and it'll show you all of the things that are available to you students.
Hello everyone, my name is Kristen. I'm a senior chemistry major. After school, I don't quite know what I want to do, but I'll probably go into the chemical industry for a little bit and then hopefully go back to school, get my master's and PhD, and then maybe become a professor afterwards. I don't know. I tutor chemistry 1 and 2, general chemistry 1 and 2, and algebra-based physics 1. And my transition into school was a lot harder than I was expecting it to be. When you're in high school, your teachers are always like, I'm preparing you for college, I'm preparing you for college. And as that's true, college is still very, very different than what high school is. And there's no good way that high school teachers can accurately prepare you for college, just because there are so many different professors, so many different ways of teaching, all that stuff. The 3 things that I learned very quickly was that I needed to be really smart with my time. In high school, like Luke said, I wasn't a huge studier. I didn't really need to study. So I got to college and I was like, I'm fine. I don't really need to study. I never have. I can just, read over my notes the night before, right before class, whenever I decide I want to, and I'll be fine. I'll get A's on all my exams. It'll be great. And that is just not true. So I had to really be smart about when I wanted to hang out with my friends, when I wanted to go eat, when I wanted to go exercise, all of these different things, so that I could fit in study time, and not just study time at all, but good study time that was actually effectively helping me, which I will go into on the next slide. The next thing I had to do was I had to find people I was comfortable with. Making friends isn't always easy for everybody, and it's probably, even with the social distancing, it's probably gonna be a little more difficult this semester, but you will do it, and it will make your life so much better. Having friends and people to talk to, people that understand what you're going through at that specific time, is so important for your college experience. You're supposed to have fun, you're supposed to have friends, and you're not just supposed to be studying all the time, even though whoever's paying for your college would probably beg to differ on that one. Another person I had to be able to be comfortable with were my professors. They're very intimidating. They're very nice people, and they are there to help you, but they are intimidating. They're doctors, they're graduate students, they are literal experts in their field, and you are just a college freshman who doesn't know what you're talking about, or you don't feel like you know what you're talking about. So finding people and professors that you are comfortable with is so important. I still go to my academic advisor is one of my freshman year professors who I felt really comfortable with, and I still do, and I love her. But also TAs and UTAs, sometimes even TAs can be a little intimidating as grad students. They seem so much older than you. So go to your UTAs. They're undergraduate students just like you. They took the class the semester before, a few semesters before. They did well in the class, and they know what they're talking about. So use them. They are a great, great resource that I feel like I didn't use as much as I should have when I was taking all those classes with a million UTAs. And the last thing I had to do was change my study habits. Like I said, in high school, I was, I would read my notes, I'd make my flashcards, do whatever it was that my teacher wanted me to do. But that was really it. It was very passively studying, very memory-based. And can you go to the next slide, Jen? Sorry. So I would do flashcards, I would write my notes, my teachers would be like, take notes on this one page tonight. And that's just not what college is. You're expected to probably read multiple sections, if not multiple chapters. And in the beginning, probably not multiple chapters, but at least a chapter. But in the beginning, I used that as study time, and I was like, I've been studying for this class for 3 hours this week, and I have an exam next week. I'll be fine. I just read this. Reading your chapter or reading your book is good. You obviously need to know the material, but it doesn't really help you with studying. The important part of studying that you need to be presently working on is understanding the material. You're not going to really be expected to just know it like obviously you need to know it, but the professors are going to expect you to be able to manipulate the material and change the material and understand how that's going to affect everything in the long run. One big thing is, especially for like, I mean, I'm a science major, so my examples are always science classes, but bio classes, breaking diagrams is incredibly important. If you remove one thing from this whole system, how is that going to change everything and like the whole, and how is that going to change the end result basically? And when I took bio 1, I didn't really realize that that was what I needed to know. So my first bio exam didn't really go that great. But you learn, and you learn these active study strategies that are listed here. And like this, the answering practice questions and relating theories, those are all really, really good, but it's incredibly important that you do it without your notes. Everybody can answer practice questions when they have their notes in front of them and they have their books in front of them, but you're not going to have them during your exams. So you need to be able to answer these questions without your notes to ensure that you understand the material. And when you don't understand the material, you need to go back and like do what you can to understand the material, develop concept maps, write what you do know, like what you can remember, and then fill in the other material using your notes. These are all active study strategies that will help you in the long run and help you do better on your exams.
Hi, everyone. My name's City. I'm a senior nonfiction writing major. After I graduate, I'm planning on taking a year or two off before going to medical school. Just took my MCAT, so you know how it feels. Good luck, Luke, with your applications. And I tutor general chemistry 1 and 2, organic 1 and 2, brain and behavior, and honors human physiology. And so some challenges I had when I came to college. I'll definitely reiterate the fact that asking for help was one of my biggest challenges. I was really shy and didn't really know how to approach even like my peers in my class. But one way I was able to overcome that was by actually, kind of forcing myself to talk to people I went to class with, but also talking to UTAs, like Kristen and I think Luke also mentioned. UTAs are people who have taken the class before you, so they're probably at most a year or two older than you, and they have plenty of experience with the subject, and more importantly, they have a lot of experience with that professor, so they can tell you sort of the different like tips and tricks for taking a certain class with a professor, because every professor teaches a little bit differently. And also talking to tutors was pretty helpful too. I did really, really poorly on my first chem exam, much like, Luke got you. And I found that it was a little intimidating to go right to the professor, and I didn't have any UTAs in that class. So I scheduled appointments with tutors, and they were also, like peers. They've also taken that class. And although they might not have experience with that professor, they know a lot about the subject material. So they can really help you to kind of like gear your studying one way or another. They might not be able to help you with that professor's specific like goals or ways that they ask questions, but they can try to give you general ideas of how to go about things. Then I would also talk to my TAs, the graduate TAs in that class, and they were really helpful for giving more like general information, things like broader concepts, going over practice problems. They were really, really helpful for that. And then I ended up also meeting with my professor in the end because I was obviously not happy with my grade. And I wasn't really sure if I was misunderstanding things about like the way he was lecturing, or if I was misunderstanding his questions. And we ended up coming up with a plan that allowed me to do a lot better on my next exams, and then ended up getting the grade I wanted in the class, which was awesome. So making sure that you sort of like try to break out of that shell. I know being shy and like not being sure like if your professor is going to be approachable can be really hard to deal with coming in as a freshman, but I promise you that everybody's looking to support you and help you to succeed. So just try to reach out, see who you're comfortable with, and take advantage of those resources as you can. And also as a nonfiction writing major, I can say writing professors love to read your drafts, so don't worry about like sending professors multiple drafts of a paper. They love to see that you're trying to improve your work. So if you're not like a science major, and if you're doing writing, that would also be like really helpful thing for you to do too. And then another thing that I struggled with a lot was learning how to take notes. I saw that there was a question in the Q&A, so I'll get a little bit into how to take notes. And I think it definitely was a struggle, not only to keep up with professors that talk really quickly, but it was also difficult to figure out after class how to configure my notes. So one thing I want to talk about is the Cornell note system. So I wouldn't really say that you have to follow the structure exactly. I would sort of group it all into recording is sort of like your note-taking time. Questions is, keeping track of your questions that you have before and after class, even during class. And then recite, reflect, and review are all a part of your summary and study time, which I will get into a little bit more. And that's when you sort of use your active study strategies. So as for note taking, prior to class, I'd recommend that if you have a textbook or even just like a nonfiction or fiction book accompanying your lecture, professors usually in the syllabus will list what chapters you have to read for that day. So I would recommend reading those chapters before you go to class and make either a mental or physical outline of the material covered in that chapter. So it doesn't have to be very detailed, but just something to kind of get the gist of like, okay, this chapter was about cells, and then the next chapter was specifically about the nucleus, the next chapter about the mitochondria. So just sort of like chunking those things for yourself and writing down any important points is good. I also took an anthropology class my sophomore year, and we had to read a book about the Israeli-Palestine conflict, which is a really complicated thing to talk about. So I used to outline each of the chapters just to kind of get an idea of where we were in the history, what parts of the conflict we were looking at, and it was really, really helpful. And also, if you don't have a textbook, a lot of professors will post slides. Even if you do have a textbook, sometimes they post their slides ahead of class. So make sure you're comparing, like the textbook outline to what your professor is covering in class. So that way you don't read materials about things that the professor is not going to talk about. And so just making sure that you either use those slides that were posted or a textbook or book to just sort of guide yourself through and make a mental map of what you're going to be covering in that class. Then in class, I'd recommend that you have some method of taking notes. I personally preferred to print out slides if the professor posted them and write directly on those slides during the class. This allowed me to just focus more on different points that the professor was making and not just simply recopy the bullet points, because the slides are most likely going to be posted either before or after your class. So you don't really want to focus on writing down those specific bullet points. The things you want to focus on are vocab words, words or phrases that they emphasize or concepts that they emphasize, and then things that they ask you questions about. And I'll just say, like, things that they ask you questions about are probably the most important, because those are things that can actually will almost definitely appear on a test. One of my professors for OChem used to ask us about this one concept every single day we came into class, and I would make sure to write down my explanation in my own words, the explanations that other students gave, and then the explanation that my professor gave. And then we ultimately had a question about that on the exam, and I got all of it right because, took all those notes. So that's a really, really good thing to keep track of. And then also, again, just make sure you're not copying down every word your professor says. I know they tend to speak really quickly, but it's important, and this is something that you'll pick up as you work through every class. You're definitely not going to get it right off the bat, and every semester it's going to be a bit of an adjustment, but just not writing down every word they say. Focus on those key words, and you'll start to notice as more and more classes go along what things they emphasize, questions they ask you, and those big key vocab words and concepts. And then also just make sure that you have a designated space to write down questions, which sort of leads me into the questions part of this, but make sure that you always have a designated space. I would say, like, leave a page in your notebook free to write down your questions. And then after class goes through, make sure you cross out any questions the professor already answered. So if you came up with a question early in lecture, sometimes the professor will explain it later. And you don't really want to ask your professor the same question over again, because that will frustrate them a little bit. So make sure that you always go through and cross out anything that was already answered, and then sort of acquaint yourself with those different resources, UTAs, TAs, tutors, and ultimately your professor, to find different ways of answering that question. And now that we're also online this semester, you might find it helpful to find online resources like Khan Academy is one that I like to use. I know if anybody's taking OChem this semester, Joe Chem is a really great resource. He went to Pitt and has a bunch of videos online to sort of like explain organic chemistry to students at Pitt who are taking OChem now. And then also, again, just Khan Academy is my go-to. So make sure you just keep finding those different resources that'll help you out. So then as for summarizing, this is sort of your after class, what do I do with my notes sort of a deal. So you don't want to just go through and simply recopy your notes. Like Kristen said, it's not a really helpful way to make sure that you truly understand the concept. Although we said that flashcards are not good, I will say that concept cards are definitely the way to go. So concept cards are like flashcards, except they allow you to go a little bit more in depth. So one example that I have is, we always say mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but we want to know why it's the powerhouse of the cell. So what does it do for the cell that allows, sorry, my lights flickered. So what does it do? What processes does it have that allow it to provide energy to the cell? How is that related to other parts of the cell? How is that related to what tissues you're looking at? So that's something that can come up with in your basic biology class or a physiology class if you take that later. And so always you want to ask yourself these three main questions: why, what if, and how. And so these three questions will ask you to really think more critically about why certain processes are happening. If something were to change, how does that affect the process? And it really allows you to review and concretely make sure that you understand the materials you're talking about. And so then also this will sort of relate into your breaking diagram, because it'll allow you to sort of like take out one piece of that diagram and then allow you to sort of think about, all right, so why is this part important? What if I took this out? What if I replaced it with something else? And how does that affect the overall process? Also making sure that no matter what, you're always summarizing things in your own words, whether that is on a concept map or a breaking diagram, or if it's just like in your notes, in your studying, if you're speaking to someone and trying to explain things out loud, always, always, always say stuff in your own words, because that's the only way to make sure that you really understand what you're talking about and you fully can address a certain topic if a professor brings it up on an exam. Also being able to relate theories is really important. This is especially important in college because your professors are going to ask you to apply information rather than recite information. So by connecting different theories and different concepts to one another, you're able to bridge those gaps before the professor even asks you to do that for yourself on a test. So you can start to see as you move through a unit or as you move through a chapter, how some of the older concepts you might have learned have related to newer concepts. So one way to keep track of all of that is actually on your notes, being able to draw arrows, being able to draw like little stars and explain this is related to topic X because, and then explain it to yourself in your own words. And so then moving on to concept maps and some of the flow charts and things that you can use. So concept maps are really, really helpful, especially if you're looking at a very broad topic and you're trying to relate all the different parts to each other. So I use concept maps, as you can see here on the slides. You sort of put one general topic in the middle and it can branch out to more specific things. So one example of a time when I used concept maps was in organic chemistry. So I was able to, there's a bunch of different functional groups that you learn about in organic chemistry, and they're all related to one another through various reactions. So what I would do is I would put one functional group at the middle, put a bunch of other ones on the outside, and then relate them to each other through their various reactions. And then if there were any exceptions or like weird rules or certain conditions that they had to be done under, I would sort of like draw a little arrow outside saying, you know, note this is why this happened. But this can even be used for something like a history class, where if you're studying something like World War II, you can sort of put World War II in the middle and then have all the different battles of World War II or all the different countries that were involved in World War II and how they're related to different events that happened in those individual places or different events that happened in those battles. So it's not just useful for things like science, it can definitely be applied outside of that. And flowcharts, if you find that concept maps aren't really helpful for the class that you're in, flowcharts are also really helpful. Like Kristen said, you can use them for things like biochemistry, physiology, even in business, if you're doing supply chain management, you have various steps that need to happen to get from point A to point B. So what happens if you take one of those steps out, or what if you replaced one step with something else? And then you can ask yourself those why, what if, and how questions. And then overall, self-testing is really, really important. One way to do that is with the breaking diagrams, but also professors often provide you with practice tests and practice questions in various ways. So I would recommend do them, no matter how easy the class seems or how well you've been doing. It's always worth your while to do as many practice questions as you can, because it's the only way to really find the holes in your knowledge in order to fill them, and also to figure out how professors will ask you questions on a test. And after you go through and do practice questions or do a practice test, always explain to yourself why your wrong answers were wrong, why your right answers were right, and why the other answers for that question were correct or incorrect. And also try to find, if it's like an open answer question, try to find new ways to explain the same concept, because that'll really test your knowledge and allow you to make connections like, oh, wait, I never realized this is actually related to something else. And during this time, like Kristen said, notes should be away. The only way you're going to make sure that you really understand the information is to be able to answer the questions by yourself and to not just reference your notes the whole time, because during a test, you're not going to have your notes. And my last point is just try to study in groups. I know that with being online and maybe being new to Pitt and not necessarily having a huge network of friends, it might be kind of hard to do right off the bat. But if you have the ability to connect with other people in your class or wherever you're living, try to create little networks of friends who you can meet up with and go over these topics. I found it extremely helpful to be able to teach others information that I was learning in a class, even if it's people that aren't necessarily taking the class with you. If you just have someone to sit there and just talk to, that can be really, really helpful, because it allows you to do that explanation for yourself. You'll actively review, use those study strategies, and then you'll be great.
Alright, y'all. My name is Trevor. I'm going to be a senior neuroscience major. My post-grad plans are also to go to med school. I just took my MCAT, so if anyone is interested in the MCAT process between Luke, City, and myself, we can definitely help you guys out. Any questions that you have, feel free to drop those in the comments. We can help you out. I tutor OChem 1 and 2, and yeah, basically one of the biggest trials and roadblocks that I faced as I transitioned from high school to college was super performance driven. So it was just super tough for me to realize, like, hey, I'm not going to nail this right away. And I can't get so wrapped up in my GPA and in my grades that I kind of lose sight of what's important. So a big component of overcoming that hurdle is work-life balance, right? And really sorting that out. So one of the things that I find is most difficult when trying to maintain a good work-life balance is actually how to know when you're out of balance, right? So a lot of people talk about, hey, make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're eating healthy, right? You're allotting, just like, Luke was talking about, kind of keeping that time management in check. Those are all good things. I think those are super important, especially as we transition, right, to this online format. I know there's a question in the Q&A, right? What tips do you have for online learning? Being able to hold yourself accountable is really important, because you don't have the structure that comes with typical in-person classes, right? You don't have to travel to class or do all of those things. So something that's really helpful rather for staying accountable is just self-diagnosing, right? You know you better than anybody. So for myself, right, I'm super performance driven. So it's really easy for me to spend a whole weekend in the library and not do anything else, right? And sometimes you have to do that, especially pre-med. Things get crazy, classes be crazy. You got to do that stuff sometimes. But there's also a balance to that. You can't do that every weekend and not expect to burn out. And I talk to a lot of people in different positions of academia, And that's such a challenge. It's just how do I avoid burnout, right? So especially for something like med school or grad school, or even as you transition from college to the workforce, it doesn't stop. You can ask Jen when she graduated, it didn't get any easier. So this is huge, guys, in maintaining work-life balance. So one thing that I like to do to maintain accountable is like, hey, let me self-diagnose, right? I know that I myself, right, can be in the library all weekend, right? So I'm going to lay out a plan, right? I'm going to say, hey, maybe I need to implement a couple of days of rest. If you're on the other end of the spectrum, maybe you really need to just tighten down the screw, right? And get yourself to work. Hey, I'm going to put in 4 to 5 hours every day. And a lot of this, guys, is trial and error, right? We're giving you guys a lot of tips. You're making a huge transition, right? But this is just it's a small portion of your life in the grand scheme, right? You're going to grow, you're going to learn, you're not going to nail it right off the bat, but it's all about trial and error, right? So I talk about plan, execute, analyze, revise, right? It's all about, hey, this week went well. I did some things that worked. Maybe I was a little burned out, or maybe I didn't feel I was prepared for that exam, right? How can I change around my schedule and see if things go better next time? So a great tool that you can use to hold yourself accountable is the Pomodoro technique. I use this all the time. I use this a ton when I was studying for the MCAT, just to keep myself on track and really see how much studying was I getting done, right? So with the Pomodoro technique, it's really simple. So you pick a task, right? Maybe it's, Monday afternoons, I do my biology homework and, Chem 1. So I'm going to pick a task. I'm going to set a timer for 25 to 30 minutes. I'm going to work until that timer goes off. And then I'm going to take a productive 5-minute break, right? So you can eat a healthy snack. You can walk around. You can just close your eyes for 5 minutes, which is normally what I do. It's just close my eyes, rest my head. Then you're going to repeat that, right? Steps 2 and 3 for 4 rounds. So you'll do 4 rounds of 30 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And you guys would be amazed. It sounds simple, but it's hard. It takes time to work up that endurance. And eventually you guys will get there, but it'll probably be humbling for you at first, what it looks like to go 30 minutes without any distractions or Twitter or Instagram or whatever it might be. So the Pomodoro technique's a great tool for you guys to use. You can get apps on your iPhone or your Samsung, whatever you have. I have something on my Mac, on my computer. Or if you want to go old school and just, leave your phone in your bedroom, you can use a stopwatch or a watch, whatever you have. I know, as I mentioned earlier, you guys as a freshman class are entering into a fall semester that no one has really seen the likes of before, right? So a lot of us have been through this last spring, but for you guys coming into school, these are really unique circumstances. So one thing that I also think is really important to talk about is how to develop a study space that's effective for you to stay focused, right? So we can use the Pomodoro technique, we can set goals and make schedules, but in order to really stay focused, you have to be intentional about making that study space. So we've got a great video for you guys over on the Study Lab website. Really, I just recommend find a place that's quiet, distraction-free. I use a Nike shoe box, and I just put my phone in there, right? And I don't take it out until that timer goes off. So that's something I do. Whatever you have to do to eliminate distractions, I think is going to be really helpful for you guys as freshmen coming in, just to, be focused, get to work, maximize your time. One last point I'll make is I always love to emphasize that wherever you're at in your academic journey, right, your identity is not in your grades. I tell that to kids all the time. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, but if you just hang tight to your core values, keep putting in your best effort, keep aspiring to grow and learn and be better, you're going to come out of these 4 years and have an amazing experience and just grow so much. So hope you guys are encouraged by all the tips and techniques we gave you guys today. We have so many other resources for you to take advantage of. We've got the Writing Center, the Math Assistance Center, the Physics Resource Room. You name it, we've got so many resources to help you guys out. We're all a part of the Study Lab. We've seen the benefits that can be reaped from tutoring, from academic coaching sessions. Jen's going to talk you through some of the more specific services we offer, but you guys are truly fortunate in all the resources that we have, and we all just really suggest and recommend taking advantage of those.
Thanks, everyone. So before I get into the actual specific services that Study Lab offers, I just really want to highlight the difference between active and passive studying, because I know every single person touched on it, and it is a bit confusing, and it's not something that anyone really teaches you, but it is the main difference between studying and test taking between high school and college. And so as that, the chart and everything else is on our website, and I will talk about that in just one second. But as you're going through and you're reviewing all your material and you're studying, think about if you are trying to memorize and then regurgitate that information, or if you're trying to understand and then recall that information. And so when you are rereading your notes, reading what you highlighted in a textbook, just doing vocabulary flashcards, all you're doing is you are just memorizing exactly what you reread 4 times, exactly what you rewrote if you're doing an outline just straight from your notes, if you are just rewriting your notes, which is something that we find a lot. All you're doing is memorizing exactly those words that you just have written 4 or 5 times. And so that doesn't help when you get to an exam and the question is not, what is this? Because that's what you have rewritten. The question is probably going to be, how does this differ from? What would happen if? And so all of these situational questions are not, you're not going to be able to answer them if you're just straight memorizing exactly what you rewrote or reread. And so by using those active strategies where you are putting your notes away and you are explaining something to someone, or you're making a concept map without your notes, or you're creating an outline without your notes, or you're doing practice problems without your notes, and then checking with your notes, that is helping your brain, because your brain's basically a muscle, your brain practice the idea of recalling information instead of just memorizing it, have it right at the front of your brain, and then quickly writing it down as quick as possible. So that's just something I want everyone to remember as you're studying through undergrad. I still use that, and I use the Pomodoro technique, and I used all of this in grad school. Pomodoro technique saved my life in grad school. There are a bunch of different apps that you can get on your phone, on the computer, to actually block out. So when you set that 25 minutes, you cannot go on Twitter, you can't go on Facebook, you can't go on Instagram. It basically locks the screen so that you are focused for 25 minutes. So all of that is on our website, which brings me to the different services that we offer. So we have a number of different types of appointments. The first 2 are academic coaching and study skills inventory. That is when you meet with me or our other academic coach, and that is a time for you to for us to talk more in depth about every single thing we talked about here. So we talk about active studying, how you can study for specific classes. So people will bring in their notes and we'll talk about how to actively review them. People will bring in textbooks. We'll talk about how to comprehend them when you're trying to read, because reading textbooks is very different in college. We can create a plan for studying for a test. We can talk about how to review tests. So really that's anything that involves academic success when it comes to reviewing, time management, note-taking, reading analysis. That's what those appointments are. If you know exactly what's wrong, if you say to yourself, I don't know how to study, you can book an academic coaching appointment, and that is the first thing we'll start on. We'll start on, okay, studying, how are we gonna go from what you're doing? If you think you're doing everything right, and you do not understand why you are getting the results that you're getting, but you're not happy with them, that's when you book a study skills inventory appointment. And that way you actually take this, you actually take the study skills inventory, and that kind of diagnoses you. And it tells you, okay, these are the areas you need to improve, whether it's time management, selecting the main idea, anxiety, and this is what you're really good at. Maybe you're great at concentration and motivation. And so those are what those 2 are. We also have tutoring. So our 4 undergraduate coaches that just spoke to you, they are also all tutors, as you saw by them telling you what they tutor. We have 2 different appointment types. So the first one is one-on-one 1-hour appointments, and those are offered Monday through Thursday 10 to 6, and then Friday 10 to 4. And that is basically a time for you to sign up in a specific subject that you are enrolled in, and you will sit down with the tutor for an hour, and you can go over pretty much anything. You can go if you need help and you have a question, or if you totally don't understand something, or you can go just as a study strategy and say, hey, I totally understand this. Can I explain it to you? And the tutor, who have all taken the class, who have all gotten an A in the class, can kind of poke holes in your knowledge. So it's a great place to go for help. It's also a great place to help you study. We have people that sign up. They consistently go once a week with the same tutor, just if they know it, if they don't know it, and they use that time to just kind of review the material. The other type of tutoring that we have is our drop-in tutoring. If we were on campus, that would physically be just you being able to drop in. Because all of our appointments and services are virtual this semester, our drop-in tutoring will be a half-hour appointment with tutors. That way, that you can only sign up for day of. So if you're doing your homework on a Sunday and you realize you totally don't understand a concept that the homework is covering, you can quickly go on and you can sign up for a half-hour appointment, and you can quickly go over that specific homework question or a practice problem that you're doing or a concept that you're working on. Drop-in hours, or our 30-minute appointment hours, are held Sunday through Wednesday, 6 to 9 p.m. So we try and cover most of the week, most of the time throughout that week. And then our last thing is Study Lab on Demand. Our Study Lab on Demand is where you will find basically everything we just talked about. It is in the chat. That is where you find all of our tools and resources. So you will find the Pomodoro technique, the active versus passive, the syllabus checklist, all of the things related to the syllabus checklist. We have it broken down into reading comprehension and note-taking, test taking, actively studying, and time management. And then we are regularly adding videos and resources and tools to help you out. We also have a section on that called the Knowledge Drop, where all our tutors are constantly making videos that talk about specific and common concepts that come up in specific subjects that they tutor. So that is all going to be subject-specific stuff, whereas all of our tools and resources are going to be just kind of blanket academic success. Does anyone have any questions? If you do, you can throw it in the Q&A or you can put it in the chat. Also, if you would like a decal, you can send your name and address to ref47@pitt.edu, and you'll get a fun Study Lab decal. Anyone have any questions? Nope. All right, so keep checking our website. We will update it with all of our hours and how you can make an appointment as we get closer to the semester. You can always chat with us on our website, or you can email us. So you can email us this is all of our contact information. If you really want to get a head start in the semester, you can make a appointment with me for academic coaching. We can kind of talk about go more in depth on what we talked about here. But I would really suggest starting off doing that syllabus checklist in syllabus week to get started there. And then as you go through the semester, start booking tutoring appointments just to help you study, book an academic coaching session so we can just kind of figure out kind of where you want to improve and just give you some tips and tricks so you can start out from the beginning. And also don't cry after you're failing your chem exam. Everyone does it. It's really a hard adjustment, and that's kind of why we are here. Like, we are here to help you as you either transition into your first year or transition into your second year or third year. It doesn't get easier. It is, as I think everyone said, it is a lot of trial and error.
Don't cry. Just come see one of us.
Yeah, for sure.
Stop this. Don't cry.
Yeah.
Don't cry. It's not worth it.
Yeah. All right. If that is all of our questions, if you have questions later, feel free to email me. My email is in all of those reminder emails that you got. But Study Lab is going to be all virtual this year, and all of that information will be on our website about how it will work. All right. Thank you, everyone. We really look forward to working with you in the fall. Feel free to reach out.
Bye, everybody.